Huh. It took Zeiss this long to come out with their first full-frame camera. Jesus. The cameras just keep coming out of Photokina even though the convention is technically over. Although granted, it might be my fault that I didn't hear about these cameras until just now, but they just keep coming. I mean, there's another one that I want to talk about. There's a digital back I really wanted to talk about. But on top of this Zeiss camera that I'm about to talk about, there's also, I just found out about the Leica S3. And I'm just like, what in the fucking hell is going on? It's just like, I thought Photokina was nearly over, but no, there were some more there's a couple more cameras that I apparently missed, which I apologize. But hey, let's finally talk about them. And granted, they're from companies that I don't really get a chance to talk about. So you guys watching might know who Zeiss is, you know, German camera. They're much more known for their camera lenses more so than cameras itself. Like, they make some of the most renowned lenses in the world for both still photography and film and cinema. So they're coming out with their first full-frame digital camera straight up, and it is called the Zeiss ZX1. And it sounds pretty cool for a first camera, and it's got some pretty impressive niceties as well as some really strange quirks, which some may argue, oh, well, I already deal with them. Like, they're kind of quirks that you have to deal with on higher-end cameras, but there's things about the ZX1 that may make it a deal breaker to others. So what does the ZX1 have on its spec sheet? Well, it has a 37.4 megapixel full-frame sensor, and it's the kind of retro-style camera, kind of like we see from Leica and Fujifilm, where it has shutter speed, aperture, and ISO dials right on the camera itself. The camera has an ISO range of 80 to 51,200. It is a fixed lens premium compact, kind of like the Sony RX1 II, in that it has a 35mm f2 Zeiss lens. It doesn't zoom, but that's kind of it's supposed to be more of the kind of camera for like street photographers, portrait photographers. I'm sure landscape photographers would also like them, because you could take some pretty decent landscapes at 35 millimeters. Okay, maybe not the widest, but still. And it has a really large 4.3-inch 1280 by 720 touchscreen, and the electronic viewfinder is full HD, 1920 by 1080, and it is an OLED electronic viewfinder. The camera has 512 gigabytes of internal storage that's able to hold up to 6,800 images. The camera's got Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and USB Type-C. This here is interesting. It actually has Adobe Lightroom CC built in. It's got many of the tools that Lightroom has, and I'll show you in a second what I mean. The camera can shoot 3 frames per second, which I kind of even for a 37 megapixel sensor, I kind of expected faster, but I guess they're not going for sports shooters. Again, they're going more for street photographers, portrait photographers, and so on. The camera is able to shoot 4K 30 frames per second video and full HD video at up to 60 frames per second. And CNET says that it does have mic and headphone jacks, and you can use an HDMI monitor if you use a USB Type-C adapter. That's what CNET said. There's no pricing information, but I would expect this camera to be, especially coming from Zeiss, it'll probably be around $2,000-$3,000, and it'll come out in early 2019. So this is definitely really cool, the first full-frame camera to come out of Zeiss. And I guess I'll start off with the Lightroom editing, which I know some people might say, hey, just do it on my computer. It's really hard to edit on a really tiny screen. Like, and I get that. You know, I shoot a lot of sports photos, and I sometimes come back from a sports match, you know, like basketball, cross country, baseball, softball, soccer, water polo, with SD cards that are just filled with images from, like, I could probably fill at least one SD card with just pictures from a single soccer match or basketball shoot. And you know, I get that, you know, it's often really difficult to do batch editing on, you know, a smaller screen, whether it be a smartphone or even a tablet or something like this size. But I have been in instances where I needed to upload at least one good picture or the money shot on social media. Like, when I used to work at my college newspaper, I would go to like a basketball game, and when it was over, I used to post a picture, like a really good picture, on Instagram. Now, how I did that with my Nikon D7000 was, with most cameras, they give you some editing tools, like built-in editing tools or raw processing tools, but they're usually really simple. Like on a Nikon, you can adjust things like exposure compensation, the picture control, the white balance, the resolution. I think on some of them you can adjust vignetting, but it's not super extensive. It's really meant for just quick and dirty. Oh, I got to get an image sent out as fast as I can, that kind of a thing. But I think it's going to be really convenient for a lot of shooters. Like, in terms of the batch editing, like if you took a ton of sports pictures or even a ton of portraits, yeah, I'm not sure if Lightroom on the Zeiss ZX1 is going to be of any use to you. But for the people who need to have at least one picture to post on social media, I think this actually could come in handy. And yes, this is pretty much, if you use the Lightroom smartphone app, you pretty much know what Lightroom on the Zeiss ZX1 has. Like, I'll show you an image from the trailer. You can adjust a lot of things: the exposure, the contrast, the shadows, the highlights, whites, blacks, the clarity, vignetting, and all the 9 yards. Like, you have all that at your fingertips with the Zeiss ZX1. So I think it could come in handy. Maybe not for every single photographer that buys the ZX1, but for those who are on the move and need to post something as fast as they can, it can come in real handy. Now, I think this is exactly why they put a touchscreen on the ZX1, because trust me, you do not want to be using Lightroom. Yes, most people use like a mouse and keyboard, like when they're editing with Lightroom on a computer, but you probably wouldn't want to use Lightroom if it was up to your camera's D-pad and dials, which I think is it's both a benefit and a problem with the ZX1, because there aren't too many external controls. Like, yes, I told you it has ISO, aperture, and shutter speed dials, but there aren't too many physical buttons for things like white balance, metering, and ISO. Like, pretty much all of that is done for the touchscreen. And I'm not sure, in the trailer, they made it seem like when the guy was, taking pictures with the viewfinder, he was like tapping stuff on the screen. So maybe you could adjust those things when you're using the viewfinder, but I think a lot of people are going to find that really awkward to deal with, because I know there's a lot of photographers out there who, one of the reasons they don't like to use a point and shoot, apart from point and shoot image quality doesn't usually match up to something like a DSLR or mirrorless camera or premium compact like this, but the issue is that because with point and shoots they want to make it easy to use, they hide a lot of the controls. So things like ISO and white balance, things that most people wouldn't figure out, you have to kind of go out of your way to find them if you're a enthusiast photographer or a professional. So I get that for some cameras, there's a reason why they want to hide the controls or you have to use the screen to access them. But I think some pros may find that as a turnoff. Like, wait, I want to do that myself. Like on my Nikon D7000, you can actually use button dial combinations to adjust white balance, ISO, and image quality. Raw JPEG or RAW and JPEG combined. So when you don't have that, I imagine some photographers will get used to that, especially because I notice how on a lot of cameras like Leica and Phase 1's cameras, where they rely primarily on the screen, there's not too many external controls. Like, I know there's definitely really high-end cameras that get all of that out of the way, and there's definitely people out there that are used to that. But for those who really like having the external controls, like having the ability to use button and dial, may find the ZX1 a pain in the ass. I think in order to meet both ways, I think what Zeiss should have done is kind of do what Fujifilm does, where they have a touchscreen, but they also have a lot of physical controls, as you can see on the Fuji X-T3 that I talked about a while back in a kind of ranty video. So some photographers may get used to it, others may find that a deal breaker. So now the other thing I wanted to talk about is I mentioned that the Zeiss ZX1, I keep having to look at the name of it on my iPad, has 512 gigabytes of internal storage, and you're probably wondering, well, okay, that's really cool. Well, that's really nice if you forget to put an SD card, but what about external storage? Does it have an SD card slot or XQD card slot or CFast card? Nope. It doesn't. Nope, 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 nope. It doesn't have an external storage slot of any kind, so you pretty much have to rely on the internal storage of this camera, which, oh boy, I know there's going to be a lot of photographers who really don't like that. I mean, yes, I know you could argue, well, if you use your iPhone or Android smartphone, you have to, plug it in every night or plug it into your wall or computer. So what's the problem with a camera? Why can't you get used to that? Well, the issue there is, and I know there's definitely photographers out there who like to shoot tethered, plugging a USB cable into their camera, into their computer. But for people like me, and frankly a lot of my photography friends, we like having just the ability of opening up the camera's memory card slot, popping out the card, and putting it straight into a computer. I know some people may not like that because you'll forget to put the SD card back in, but it's still a really convenient method of transferring images. And as you know, when internal storage fills up, you're going to have to delete the images that you took, once the memory gets filled up. And I could imagine that could be a pain in the ass for a lot of people. So I think it's just that so many photographers and videographers are used, and myself included, I really like having the ability of just popping out a memory card and putting it into a computer to transfer the images. And of course, if you ever get in those emergency situations, because I know a lot of professionals will carry a ton of SD cards with them, so when their memory card fills up, they don't have to, format the camera. They could just, switch out the memory cards. Whereas in this case, you're going to have to, I think what's going to happen is once you take your images for that shoot, you're going to have to format your camera every single time, which I think photographers might say, oh, well, you have to do that anyway with your memory cards so that you don't have to keep buying memory card after memory card. But I find that really inconvenient, and I know especially since a lot of photographers are used to just taking out the memory card, unless they're using something like the newer Macs, I guess, because as you guys may know, the new MacBook Pro doesn't have an SD card slot, which thanks a lot, Apple, which some may get used to, but I imagine a lot of people are going to find this really odd. So, but all that aside, I definitely think the ZX1 is definitely a really neat, if kind of quirky, full-frame camera, and it may not appeal to everybody, especially since it's a very niche camera in that it's one of those cameras where it has a prime lens, which, hey, prime lenses produce some really good pictures, so that's why they wanted to put that in. They didn't want to put a zoom lens in. So I know there's a photographer out there, or even a lot of them, swear by prime lenses, whether it's changing them out or using a camera that just has the one lens. So while it may not appeal to everybody, I think it's definitely got a lot of appeal, especially if you're a travel photographer, street photographer, portrait photographer, and maybe even now and then shooting the occasional landscape. So it's got a lot of nice features like the 35 megapixel or 37 megapixel full frame sensor and the Lightroom editing, although I think some may be turned off by the lack of external controls and also the fact that it doesn't use external storage, it uses just internal storage. So take it for what it's worth. I still think it's kind of neat. I probably wouldn't pick one up because I like having external controls and memory card support, but I know there's going to be people out there who are going to be really drawn to this camera. And coming from Zeiss, a company that's really famous for its lenses, I think Zeiss is going to have a relative hit on their hands. So anyway, please post your thoughts down below. Oh, about the Zeiss ZX1. Do you want to buy one? Are you interested in it? Are you excited? Are you a person that likes to use a lot of Zeiss lenses on your photo shoots or your video productions? Please post your sample photos or videos down below in the comments. Post your thoughts. If you have any ideas for videos, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Oh God, I gotta talk about the Leica S3 next, and I gotta edit my video on the I'm Back digital back. So that's all coming soon. So this has been Blood Moon Bobby, and thank you guys for watching. Hey guys, be sure to like this Blood Moon Bobby video if you enjoyed it. Please share this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. Be sure to ring the notification bell to be notified about my latest upload. Follow me on my social media pages at Blood Moon Bobby to find out about what I'll be covering next and for more of my opinions. Thanks for watching.